want to introduce everyone to Haley. Haley was my student at Otis, and she's also, I'm sort of a mentor to Haley Joe. She was Haley when she was in my class. Terrifically talented, and of course, looking for her first PA job. Do you want to say anything, Haley? Joe?
I'm just really excited to be here. I really enjoyed doing this with Bobby and Erica.
But Haley is a tech, is extremely tech savvy. So I thought she would be an extra bonus point for us to have her because she can walk us through some tutorials. And Erica?
My name is Erica Johnson. I am a second-year costume design MFA student with Marcy Froelich at the University of California, Irvine. And I'm just looking for summer work or just to have a really nice time this morning and present some research with everyone.
And so Erica is where I'm on a museum project in Austria. So Erica is working with me on this. It's a pretty exciting project, but she's also helped me with one of my classes at Otis. And this is what I've been doing since you all have seen me last, I think, not everyone, but I do a lot of teaching. So in the left, you can see Haley is on the left. This was her final exam. She dressed us all up as, what did they call?
Lolita.
Yeah, Gothic Lolitas. So that's, and then I made a video for LACMA on, these were all how-to costumes from our closets with Christina Engel. And then on the right is my class from Woodbury. It's sort of weird to be teaching in Los Angeles because I belong to this group of costume history teachers from, their Harvard, every place, all over the country. And then they'll say things like, oh, well, we brought sheets in and wrapped everybody up in togas. And then, I just sit there because what do I say? Well, yeah, we brought sheets in and we went up to the Getty and wrapped everybody up in togas and paraded around so they could have Instagram pages. It's being in LA is so great for teaching because you have every resource available to you, which is, so for Raining Men, I did a grant to do that. And then I got a grant to teach a class with LACMA and the Getty during the Getty's exhibition on fashion photography. LACMA had lent them 10 costumes for that exhibition. And so Sharon Tekeda, the curator, and Clarissa is the curator, and then Paul Matineau on the right is the curator of the photography show. So the three of them did. Haley, you were there. How was that?
It was awesome. I learned so much about curation and how museums are run. I never would have even thought about it before.
So in addition to seeing the original couture costumes, Paul brought all of his blueprint charts on what it takes to put an exhibition together, how you have to think of space. So it was a fun way. Haley is a costume major. So it's a fun way to think of costume as legacy as opposed to the legacy on film. Oh, I'm not finished talking. So this mainly has to do, so I also was part of a National Endowment of the Arts grant to speak in Ohio. And I did a thing on True Grit. Mary Zofries helped us and Paramount helped us. And we put costumes together and put them in their museum. And then we did a big team reads for the National Endowment of the Arts. All of the high school students read True Grit. And then I came out and I wore a burqa when I came out to tell them that seeing a burqa in Massillon, Ohio was about as unusual as it was to see a woman in a pair of pants when True Grit was made. And then I've done a lot of panels and a lot of speaking there. I'm with Michael Wilkinson. We were in Austin, Texas at the Harry Ransom Center. This wonderful picture here for Marlene is for Marlene Stewart. I have a really nice situation at Otis where they let me teach whatever I want. So I taught a class last semester on artificial intelligence. And so we were studying how that's going to affect the arts. And when we talked about robots, Marlene had just done an amazing movie called The New Guy. And so we brought Marlene invited Marlene to come talk to us about what is a robot going to look like. And the students, part of the way my classes work is we research who the invited guest is. Then the students are responsible to introduce them, and then they do the Q&A with the guest. I have to step aside, which is really tough because I'm a control freak. And then, so they guide the panel and, they'd ask the questions, they make sure it runs smoothly. And then they create a really great thank you. And some of their thank yous have been out of this world. They created none of them were fashion students, save one. And they created a big map of when Charles Lummis walked from Ohio to California. They made a map of that walk and the beginning of the Southwestern Museum, our first museum. And then the last thing I want to mention that has happened since I left is the 705 gave me a gold card. And I've done a lot of work with my union with 705 since I've gone. And in 2008, Valerie Laven Cooper and I had a conversation about how we could diversify and figure out a way to bring diversity into our union. And that's become the PACT initiative. And in this picture at LACMA, one of the students from the PACT initiative, it was invited to come to that too. So we've been bringing people in from East LA City College, and we're spreading out. And then we've also started an oral history program. And I think that probably that's why they gave me a gold card. Okay, that's it. That's caught up enough. And so here's what that's enough of that. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Is we thought we wanted to talk about how to organize your research and how to find what you want and how not to be overwhelmed, because it's too overwhelming now. So what we thought we would do is a fake project where we start with, we've been given the project to do a live action Toy Story. So obviously the first thing we do is look up all the information of the origins of the story. And this is me here because John Lasseter is close to my age. So Toy Story is from his childhood, which we want to always keep in mind so that when we come to 2019 and 2021, we're going to move forward. What was the childhood? What were the toys? What were the childhood colors of the current director? We know how John Lasseter, we know that Buzz Lightyear, the colors were chosen by John and his wife. Her favorite color, I think, was purple, and his favorite color was green, and you get Buzz Lightyear. So we want to make sure we know all that information, all the backstory before we start. Everybody is together. And then after we discover we want to do a live action Toy Story, they say, no, we want it to be like True Grit. We want it to look like True Grit. So it just turns out that Erica, the intern working with me this semester, is an amazing historian. So I thought, what a smart thing for me. I can turn this over to Erica to help me with the research. Take it away, Erica.
Thank you. Really quickly, in talking about backstory, I just want to say that there's a land acknowledgement that we need to take care of. For those of us who live in LA and Irvine, we are located on the homelands of the Chumash, the Tongva, and the Quiche people who, in the face of ongoing settler colonialism, continue to claim their place and act as stewards of the ancestral lands as they have for the past 8,000 years. We acknowledge their ancestral claim to this land and honor their stewardship. So, and that is important for...
Sorry.
No, you're good. That's important for my part of the presentation because I wanted to work with diversifying the cast of Toy Story as it would have been in the American West in the 1890s to the 1910 time period. So what's going to happen, Haley's going to continually click kind of, and that's going to give me talking points to discuss with my research. So Haley, if you don't mind, the first thing that I like to do with my research is consider and find search terms that I can plug into different databases, archives, libraries, you name it, and then see what pops up. And this is mostly time consuming just to like weed through the various images and see what libraries or people have considered as an African-American cowboy. So from this, I just like to siphon my research down and find the images that best represent what I'm looking for as a researcher that I can then present to a designer. Because they want, or I would assume the designer wants, a range of images that can fit wherever their instincts take them. In doing this, I also like to think about modern resources such as the Compton Cowboys. They are a group of African-American gentlemen who live in LA, as I'm sure many of you know, and they live in Compton, and they just work to spread awareness and the diversity that was in the American West from the very beginning and continue to do so today. So in doing this research, I looked at different archives and locations such as Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is where the original True Grit was located. I'm a Colorado girl, so I also had to look at the Denver Public Library, the National Cowboy Museum, and the Buffalo Bill Center of the West to get some really good general ideas for where I could find research and where there might be hidden photographs and things that I can look into. For Buzz Lightyear, this one was honestly kind of a fun one to think about based on the time period of the 1890s to 1910s. So with this, the real inspiration was just trying to think of what were buzzwords, no pun intended, for the time period. What would flight be like? What was the exploration? What were the new curiosities and ideas for the time? So in doing this, I actually found, by typing in the first flight suit or the first wingsuit, I found a man named Franz Eilert, who was French, even though I said that with a German accent. And it was really interesting just to see the general silhouette and shape of this man and his invention, and kind of see where we've gone from this time of 1891, I believe, was when his first original flight came out, to the Wright brothers of early 1900s, and just to see the model and the shape and the silhouette. And then also considering for a time period, trying to provide research for a designer, what other popular media might have been present, and how can I incorporate that into research that they could quickly see, get a color palette from, get a general idea of where they might want to go with the character. So this was one of the earliest comic books, was The Amazing Stories of 1928. Before this, it was all usually black and white. So trying to give them a general idea of like what popped in the American perspective, and how can they use it to help funnel their designs. And then the reason I had to include the diving suit was because, again, we have to look at the silhouette of what Buzz Lightyear was, and then understand that perhaps we can't get that exactly from a flight suit, but what was another occupation or exploration that involved a different silhouette than what you might see walking down the street of Arkansas. So I had to go with the diving suit, especially with Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea being such a popular book for the time period. I thought it would be appropriate just to kind of offer the merging of two worlds and to twist the idea of what exploration might actually have been for Toy Story and True Grit. So,
Were you finding a lot of spacesuits?
Actually, no, because of the fact that space, came around in the 1950s or so, and aviation didn't actually take off. Again, I'm sorry, no pun intended, until World War II in 1914. finding things that were more what we consider modern and would have helped Buzz Lightyear's toy silhouette weren't readily available. So you have to kind of massage what you're looking for and take different inspiration from different ideas and images.
So I want to say something here that I never thought of this until just now. The 2001 spacesuits are red, and I'm going to bet you that came from this comic book.
It's really interesting that you would say that, Bobby, because I think we all have like general ideas in the very back of our mind of like where things might have come from in the history of things. And that's part of my fun, is saying like, oh, I look at an image and I'm like, that's probably exactly where someone got this idea and this concept from. So I would bet that you're right, that someone probably saw this or they were looking up spacesuit things and they found comics.
It was the color.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can ask her a question, please, while all of us are speaking. Please feel free to speak
or interrupt or type in chat, please.
Oh yeah, type in chat.
Perfect, Jessie, my girl. So what's interesting, and I think part of like the world we live in today, is that it's easier usually to find images of men or males in time periods because they were more significant than females up until probably 1911 for American West. So what I wanted to do with Jessie, and what I had to struggle with Jessie, was finding resources and search terms that would give me just females who lived the American West lifestyle, who did ranching, who were out west more so than they were in the East Coast or in a popular large city. So with that, I started looking more so at my geographical relevant areas. So again, looking at Fort Smith, Arkansas, looking in Colorado, looking at Wyoming, to kind of see where in the West I could pinpoint either archives or search terms that would give me greater success in finding images of women who lived this lifestyle and were not posed as women at the bottom right would be, because posed photography commonly didn't show accurate costumes, as I'm sure many of you know. It just showed what would be the best or the funnest clothes for the time period. So I want to offer to a designer the best and the staged wherever possible, so that they can just have their range of ideas and know what may or may not have fit within the silhouette in the time period. So again, we all loved Jessie in this flying dress situation. And I like to also offer images that I think cater to the character, so that we can see the liveliness and how a costume or outfit might have to fit or modify for any stunts that the designer may want to suggest or do for an actor. And then Bo Peep. This one was very fun for me because I looked up original shepherdess ideas and trying to find things for the American West. And it mostly talked about male shepherds, clearly, because, again, it was very uncommon for women to be living in the American West and trying to do this exploratory lifestyle. But then if you continue to like search through different archives or different Google searches, to be quite honest, I came upon these paintings of a Navajo shepherdess by Harrison Becquet, who was a Navajo artist. And he painted these in the early 1900s. And what struck me was the fact that in looking at these old paintings and then seeing new news articles about the Navajo herders and shepherds who live today and who have continued this lifestyle and this trend of being shepherds and herders, there's a very clear line that I think can be explored of where past culture meets present culture and how you could intertwine that if you so chose to as a designer. So that was something I was very interested in. But given that we're looking currently at Fort Smith, Arkansas, and where the original Tree Grit took place, I also understand that was traditional Cherokee land. And so I wanted to offer a color palette for the designer who may want to merge colors from different people and see like what they could work with, which is why I provided a color palette. And then again, it's just understanding the norm of photography, seeing that the woman on the top left, this was something that was photographed by a traveling photographer for the US government. And then we see these posed dancers at the very bottom who are clearly in their very best dress. And so one might be more traditional and more standard for what we might see on screen, and the other might be something that's a little more dressier and might be at the very end of a standard that we can base everything off of for the designer. So. And then I just thought I'd give y'all a quick understanding of how to use Google in case anyone had any questions. What I like to do is I like to create different folders, almost using it as a desktop for myself, where I can organize all images, news articles, files, presentations, etc. So I just create a different folder, and then within that folder, I'll separate it.
Wait, can you slow down a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's just walk through it a little more closely. So let's take, are we talking about Jesse here?
I used Woody, actually.
I mean, Woody, excuse me. I'm looking at a guy calling him
That's
Jesse.
good.
All right. Can you walk us a little more slowly about how you thought about it?
Absolutely.
We have a lot of time. So let's think about, let's go step by step about what happened. So are you trailing as you set this up? How did you do it? Did you start tracking? Did you create folders before you started your job, or did you start creating folders as you went along, or did you get your basics down first?
I like to create folders as I start per character that I might be researching. So I had set up 4 originally for Woody, Jess, Buzz, and Bo Peep. And then what I also like to do is create a spreadsheet of resources that I use. So if I ever have a question about where I got a resource, I can input the data or the website at the very least into it and say, I went to Buffalo Bill.
Okay, where are you putting the spreadsheet? Where does that?
I would put the spreadsheet in the very original document of research, as you can see.
Okay, what does it look like? Maybe can you show us? Take us from step 1. So we're looking at, you've just got your Google Drive, it's empty. You're going to create your first folder. Are you bringing stuff in already? Do you have a folder on your desktop that you're going to bring into Google Slides, or are you going to create it all in Google Slides?
I like to create it all in Google Slides, but you can do either. And what I would do is have this slider open, which is on the top left, and then I can create a Google Doc, and then I can label it just as I would with a Word document, and that's where I would input just textual information. And then I can also, as seen by this side tab, do a folder and create a new folder, and then from there, I can title it Cowboy or whatever the term might be that I need to help condense my research. And then I can input images to it by either saving them directly to the folder, as you might do with a desktop, or if I saved it to my desktop first, I can drag it over into the drive, to the folder itself. And again, I can title all of these as I need. And I usually do it, so I title them based off of the website or the resource I got it from. Again, just to kind of help myself keep track of my steps and where I got images. And then if I wanted to share this, like I wanted to share this with Haley, I can move over to the drop-down arrow and I can just share the email to whomever needs it, for a team member or a professor, in my case, usually. And it works best that way for me. And the reason I like Google so much is because I can do a lot of edits live time, and someone else in my team can also be looking at the same document, seeing the edits I make, and can comment or add to the document or the folder as I do the same. So that was a bonus for me.
Okay. Does everyone understand how, does anybody have, let's go back to your slide again. Does anybody have a question about how to set up their Google Slides? Goody. And then are you going to open it up for everybody to share this? Is this going to be the master slide for the crew? Are you going to invite everybody to share this, or do you want to create a separate one for everyone?
You can do that as well. You can have one slide for just you and perhaps the closest team member that you have or the designer. And then the designer could share that or share a duplicate of that folder to whomever they choose to allow access to it. And that can be separated by just they have access to view the document, or they can have access to edit as well.
Do most of you work in Google Slides?
No, I've never used it.
It's easy. Do you think you can follow what she just said?
I think I need to review it, but I don't want to take the time now. I kind of do it differently, but I'm excited about this process.
Great. So here's what so we'll go through the whole thing and then we'll go back and answer specific questions, but we're going through really fast. We're going to be through this so fast.
So Coolers is pretty easy, and I do have a video on this later, and I can do a live demo if we need to do that as well.
Maybe. Yes.
What's that? Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I said maybe yes.
Yeah. But you go to the website and it says generate a palette, and it'll bring you to a screen that looks like what's on the right-hand side here, but it's just randomized. And then you click on the little camera and you take whatever image that you need to find the color of. Say that's a picture of your actor, or like you found this great reference image here. So you drop in your image and then you click on this first color box at the bottom here. And that way you can start picking out your colors. So you drag your mouse onto the image and then it'll start picking the colors for you. So you just go one by one down the palette. There's the blue, and then you click on the purple and change that to the red and just keep going on from there. And then once you're done and you're satisfied with the colors, you click next in the upper right-hand corner.
Excuse me, is she going too fast, everybody?
I didn't understand how you changed the purple to red.
Hi, Nan Rose.
Hi, Barbie. How are you?
God, it's so great to see you. Or not see you.
Okay, I'll see you.
Sorry, back to the project. So Haley, can we go really slowly?
Yeah, it's better if I could show you, but basically, so you click on, I don't know if you could see my cursor at all.
Yes.
So
Okay.
could you just bring something up and do it? Is that possible? Is it too hard for you to do that?
So this is the Cooler site. It just generates a random palette for you. What I click on, if I want a palette from a photo, I click on this little camera right here in the upper right-hand side. And let me grab an image for us. I'm just going to pick a space.
Oh, nobody's in a hurry, Haley.
Okay. So I'm just dragging an image from my desktop into the upload image and dropping it there. And it'll kind of generate a palette for you immediately. But if you want to be able to pick and choose everything, you click on the first color in this palette and you take your mouse and you just click and drag, and it'll bring up like an eyedropper tool and show you the exact color that you're picking up on. So let's say I really like this green, and then I'm going to click on the second palette color here, and I really like this white color. And then you just keep going. Say the blue, and let's say you want more or less of what they have. You can use the plus and minus button here to add or remove the amount of palette colors that you have on here. Let's say I want this yellow color. So once you're satisfied with your palette colors, you click next right here, and you can open it in the generator. So that's going to pull everything up right here. It's going to give you a hex code for everything that you want.
What's a hex code mean?
A hex code is so you can identify the color in different programs. So say you go into Pantone, they have a color finder. You can actually find the color through Pantone and get a closer match. So like once you find this palette and you like it, you can export it. So I think there's a lot of options here. Basically, the only ones you're really going to need are the image. And if you are working in Photoshop, there is a file called ASC, which you can directly download this color palette into your swatches on Photoshop.
Okay.
And then if you want to do another image, then you just have to create another palette from photo. You can also, if you make a free account through here, you can save it to your account so you don't lose it. And you can come back to this and kind of change things up. Like say it wasn't quite the right brown, or you need, like, let's say if you also need a shade in between here, they have a really cool feature where if you click this plus button, it'll create that for you.
Okay, could you do me a favor? Go completely out and start this process over again so that everybody can go step by step. We can see what the whole thing is. But now do it one more time, really slowly, and take us through each thing. So here's the colors page, okay?
So it's coolers.co. Don't put in com because you'll go to a different website, which we have it on the slides, so you'll be able to find it, but just wanted to warn you. So they have an app as well as like a Photoshop extension, but I just use the desktop because that's easiest. Just start the generator.
Okay, is everybody with us so far? Yes. Okay.
Cool. So creating a palette from a photo, go to the camera here. Oops. And then you're going to browse or drag an image from a folder on your desktop into here. So I don't know if this will pop up everything or if you guys can see it through the screen share.
We cannot.
Okay. Yeah, I just browsed through my photos and picked one, or I can do it again and just try and show you. I just drag it from my desktop into here. And then clicking on the first color that you want to change.
Okay, is everybody with you with what she just did?
Jacqueline also has a question if we could talk about.
Yeah, let's do that first. Let's respond to that.
Okay, so everything, we want to go through what's in the pull down menus here. So it's getting like a little more advanced. So these three dots here, it's just showing how the palette looks. I find this the easiest to understand. You can also view it as a gradient, but you don't get to see like the hex codes or the names of everything. It just looks really pretty. And there's like a luminance map, so you can see how saturated each color is. Let's see, there's also a tutorial. So if you want to come in here and start watching the tutorial, you could do that too. There's also an option to create a collage. So you do the same thing where you drag your image into here and do the same process that I was doing before, which is clicking. Oh wait, this one actually, this is why I didn't like it very much. So this one just generates the palette for you, and there's not a lot of control. So I don't really like the collage maker. I just like using the create a palette from a photo. But if you want to give it a shot, you can upload in here and see what it gives you, because it's not even the same colors that are in the background here. This is also a cool feature. I mentioned this in the video that I have saved. For color blindness, like let's say you're working with a director that's colorblind, you can actually find out which type of color blindness they have and change it to where they can kind of be more on the same page with you about what colors you're using, which I think is really interesting. You can also adjust the palette. So say you really like these colors here, but it's even darker and grittier than like the director wants, less saturation. So you can just like take this slider here and just drag it down and apply that to your colors. And you have a little more of a grittier palette. You can create a palette without an image. So what you can do, like sometimes I just get inspired, I'll come onto Coolers and it says press the space bar to generate color palettes. So I'll just do that. And I go through here until I find something I really like. I'm just hitting the space bar. So let's say I really like this, but this is too much for me. So what I can do, I can lock all of these and then hit the space bar. It'll just give me some random colors, which I think is really fun. And you can also view the shades to kind of pick what you want on here as well. And you can also save colors to your favorites. So if you do make that free account through Coolers, you can come back to this color. And if you already have hex codes, like say you pulled a color that you really like from an image on Photoshop, which I have a tutorial on how to do that as well. You can just enter in that number here and put in the exact colors that you want as well.
Haley, is it possible that you could, without doing any of that, just go and find the color you want? Like I want, instead of the copper Crayola, to be a red. How would I do that?
I don't really know how. You could just, yeah, you can't really go through like a color palette that I know of and like just pick each one.
Can you do me a favor? Can you just try clicking on the copper Crayola option on the bottom of it?
Yeah.
Wow, this is awkward. I managed to do it yesterday.
Sorry.
Very good.
Yeah, create a palette without a reference photo. Yeah, generally I create my palettes through Photoshop because I know how to get the exact colors. This is more of like, let's say you have a skin tone that you're looking at. You can also, get that from an image. Let me grab one over here. Let's see. So let's say I want to find her skin tone. And then this is obviously going to be like the only color that we're really pulling from here. So I'm going to open it in the generator. So this is going to be her skin tone, and you can lock that and change these colors with the space bar and kind of see what works with that. I also like, let's say I drag this image back in here again, and you can kind of find a range of the shades. So that's the first color palette. This is like a little bit lighter. And then a little darker. And then you can bring this with you to see, what colors would look best. Like, let's say you're about to go shopping. And you can bring this with you on the go to try and match to what you need. Does anybody have any questions?
So this is much easier than, we're also going to do the Pantone way, excuse me, I'm going to have dessert here. We're also going to do the Pantone way, but this is a much simpler way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the Pantones, I would say like that's good if you want like this exact color. But if you're on the go and you're like, oh, we have 4 weeks to do this, like, and this is the reference image I have of this actress. Okay, let's just go. So this is also on your phone, so you can download the app and it makes it really easy.
All right. So here's what happened, of course. After Erica did all of her hard work for the costume designer, everybody's ready to go. Of course, they get a call that Fox was sold to Disney, which is what happened to Marlene. And they're going to Marvelize it. So now we have to change everything that we've done to go to the next step. But I want to add, we're going to go back and go through the Google again. Okay, at the end of this, we'll just, so that we understand it the way we understand Cooler. Okay, take it away, Haley. What happens now?
All right. So trying to look at things from like a pop culture perspective, and also drawing from people that I think that the designer and the director will be able to understand. So I started looking at Jenny Lewis. And
Can I interrupt again? Sorry. I tried not to interrupt too many times. But how many Instagram followers? How many Instagrams do you follow?
So I have 2 Instagrams. I have one that I use for my art, and I follow a bunch of people that inspire me. So I follow about 500 people on there. And then I have like a costume one that I also follow 500 people on. And I don't like to make it any more than that because I think it can get pretty overwhelming. Yeah, I like to be able to see lots of different people on my feed, so I can still continuously get inspired as I'm going through and not see like the same stuff twice. So I follow Jenny Lewis, and I have for a while. I think she follows a lot of really interesting and cool artists. Like to the left here, Shop from the Past. They take vintage Western and they really know their history behind the Western looks. And then they restore them, and they'll also adjust the silhouette so a like contemporary customer can understand it and want to wear it, which I think is really interesting. So then I look at, who is this shop runner? Who are they following? And then, looking at the influence from them, and looking at the way that pop culture has started to interpret the classic cowboy kind of French look. And then to the right of Jenny Lewis up here in her like faux airbrush nudie suit is Bitter Squeaks. So Bitter Squeaks is a pop surrealist artist who also takes inspiration from retro or vintage toys. And she will restore them, but she also creates like new vintage toys. So very inspired by the look. As you can see, this little gun here. So taking a lot of inspiration from like those little shooter guns that I used to have one of these as a kid. And then I got the idea from this to go look at some on Etsy to kind of see like those ones that we used to have as a kid. And I ran into this Hungarian rare spaceman toy, which I just thought was so cool. Like the color palette, the kind of mod imagery, kind of looks like Buzz a little bit already with like the space helmet. And then from there, I went to this, I went through a bunch of like vintage toys. I don't know, we don't really have him on the slide, but his nemesis is Zurg, who's like a space alien robot kind of guy. So then I started looking at like 1980s vintage Gundam kits, and also looking at the colors in there and like the shapes and silhouettes that they used there as well. And then moving on to the characters. So I looked at contemporary reality. Once again, the Compton Cowboys, they're just a really cool, amazing group. I'm actually originally from Austin, Texas, and I love riding and I used to do barrel racing and stuff myself. So this is like a group of people that I really like to follow and support. So looking at them, and then looking at people like Lil Nas, and how he's kind of brought a resurgence of making like cowboys really cool, and a bunch of the information like that we didn't know, or like I would say people my age group wouldn't have known about like cowboys of color, because I feel like cowboys have been in popular media white for like a very long time. So looking more into that because of pop culture. And I didn't actually know this about the nudie suit. I'm also Jewish, so it was really cool for me to learn that the creator of the nudie suit was Jewish as well, because I've never really heard of like a Jewish cowboy. So that was neat for me as well. And I also have a big love for video games. I think it's really interesting how they decide to design for video games. So I think they take like the essence of a character and break it down for the youth to understand it, So I think it's interesting to kind of look at that and the way that how pop culture simplifies a cowboy and, combining that with the historical research. And then for Buzz Lightyear, again, going with the shot from the past and going into looking at the space toys, like that was my process earlier, finding this really cool Hungarian astronaut. And then this over here is finding a color palette inspiration from using Pinterest and also using those images from Pinterest to get Pantone colors on Photoshop, which I have a tutorial for, and we can hopefully go through at a later point. I also use ArtStation a lot. This is from Mass Effect, an astronaut.
What is ArtStation?
So ArtStation is a collective website for concept artists like Philip Boutet, and like amateurs as well. But there's some really cool stuff on there. And there's like a search database where you can find stuff. So there's a few more images that I pull from ArtStation as well. And I also wanted to pull in Among Us, which is a very, very, very popular game. Like lots of people are streaming it and playing it right now. So just pulling the colors and like very simplified astronaut silhouette off of these little guys here, which I think is really fun. And then Jessie from Toy Story. So like I said, I used to participate in barrel racing. There's a picture of me on my horse about 10 years ago. And I wanted to look at contemporary riders. So this is Equestrian Noir, who she does a lot of really cool photo shoots and outfits with her horse. I would definitely recommend giving her a follow on Instagram. It's really beautiful stuff. And some more Instagram barrel racers. And I also went on to YouTube. There's the Cowgirl of Compton and Kanisha Jackson. So this video here is of Kanisha Jackson. She is a rodeo queen, a Black rodeo queen. And there's actually different circuits for white and Black rodeos still to this day. And a lot of Black rodeo like people in general don't get to participate in the white competitions. But it's her goal to be able to be rodeo queen throughout all of them. And she's amazingly talented. If you watch this video, I can link it. Like she goes really fast. It's incredible. But yeah, her style is really cool too. And this is her daughter, Courtney. So it's a whole family of mother, daughter, granddaughter barrel racers. And then down here is an Instagram called the Yeehaw Agenda, which is definitely just pulling more of like cowboys of color into a place where everyone can kind of see it and appreciate it. So for Bo Peep, she goes rogue in this movie. She takes off her shepherdess skirt and she wears pants now. So I was thinking, okay, so she goes rogue, literally looking at like a rogue in like Dungeons and Dragons or like a video game. And then I was also thinking for Bo Peep as a bow staff, because she has a staff here and playing into the name and seeing in D&D also that they have a bow staff as a weapon, as well as looking at actual martial artists who use the bow staff and like what they wear. So I think it's really interesting taking her and making her a little more distressed and grittier, seeing like the textures that are used with these martial artists over here. And then going again into ArtStation in this upper right-hand corner here, and finding like concept artists that have taken this into like another fantasy level. And I have all of their information here if you'd like to see their work. But I thought it was a fun way to incorporate things that the character already has. Okay. And then, so I use Dropbox with work, the dreaded Dropbox. I don't know how easy.
Wait, Haley, I'm going to interrupt again. Did you
Yeah.
see this question, please?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay, so look at Brianna. Before we leave your work, let's look at what she said.
Oh, yeah. Any tips on discovering or finding interesting Instagram accounts? So, like how I was looking at Jenny Lewis, I like to look at artists because I feel like they already curate their feed for you. So if you go into who they're following, like I think the most interesting people through that. Because I think it can be pretty hard just kind of going through the tags and hoping that you kind of stumble onto something because there's just so much stuff, right? But if you find someone like with a vision that you like, or at least this is what I do for my personal stuff and for my research, is just find someone with a vision that you think suits what you want or what you like, and then just go like kind of stalk them, like go see who they're following and then who that person's following. And it's just this very fun, like link, like it's just a rabbit hole, but it's a very fun one. And then by the end of it, like you're going through your feed and you're able to see a bunch of really interesting stuff every day, a lot of inspiring stuff.
If I can pitch in here really quick, I almost consider it like Pinterest, where you just keep going down different tabs and you kind of see something.
Yeah.
I want to ask that, do both of you use Pinterest? How much do you use Pinterest?
I use Pinterest a lot. I think it's a good starting point, especially if you're like getting your, you can get your base ideas and like kind of your color story, your story in general all together. We have a little bit of a Pinterest tutorial later on. And also if you use like Google reverse image search, so you can kind of take those inspiring images and then go find the source material pretty easily.
For me, sorry, really quick, I use Pinterest once I have a basic historical knowledge down. And then I can go from there and like search specific things. Like if I want to look for a bishop sleeve or an A-line dress, I can keep seeing different options and then I narrow it by the time period.
I agree. Pinterest is the last thing I look at because the sources on it are always so terrible.
They're not good sources. For sure.
It messes up my research. So they're almost never my first line of defense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm exactly what Erica said. I try to get my feet wet about where I'm going and what I'm doing, and then I sort of let the Pinterest wave come because it's just so overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. I find Pinterest for me is better as like kind of an aesthetic mood board rather than finding like historical sources or anything like that. And then like doing the reverse Google image search. If you find an image on there that you really like and like hopefully it has like the background that you really need.
I think that's where it's best. Mm-hmm. Pinterest for the reverse search so you can go on and find other stuff. It overwhelms me and I used to keep all these Pinterest categories and I got so overwhelmed by that. I don't even do that anymore. I like to treat it more like the Wild West.
Mm-hmm. Wow, Bobby, pun intended. Really quick, I'm just going to address Danielle's question about finding search terms. Sweet. Which just kind of means going off of this idea of using Pinterest, they can sometimes title things a certain way. So like Pinterest might say a raglan sleeve or a very specific kind of detail or design or time period or a description for an image. So raglan sleeve or African-American cowboy. So using that's how I like to kind of start my search, is just looking at that general title and then continuing to see like what other resources are available based on that. And that goes across my different sources. So maybe I look at that at a library, and then I continue that over into a very specific archive, like the Fort Knox archive, just to see like what the general term is and what the general term gives me for different sources, if that kind of helps answer that question.
I also will reverse the words. Like I'll put, woman's dress, bishop sleeve. Then I'll put bishop sleeve. I keep fiddling around with the words. And then I also, I rarely start with the first page. I usually just skip the first page and start with the second page of resource, of references or whatever the Google search is popping up, because I know everybody else that's looking has already looked at the first page.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spend a lot of time going further in so that I can find, something that's not first look, or that the algorithm has already, I resent the algorithm so much.
Yeah.
That I try to, see if I can get around it.
I also, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I also, on Instagram specifically, if I find, like, let's say I do my basic search term, right? And then I find something I like, I go look at that user's hashtags to see what they use. And then I'll click on all those hashtags and see if that brings me any more. And it usually does. Yeah,
yes, the hashtag is a really good source to do. I agree. That's a great one.
And we do have sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to address Susie's question for the reverse Google search. We do have a tutorial on that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We just have a couple more things before we get to that. But we're all making the same point that I want to drive home. There's so much information now, and there's so much data available. And like I said, especially after teaching artificial intelligence, I really resent the algorithms making my decisions. So how I work now is I generally go to an expert. So for example, when we started working on this, obviously I asked these two, but I also called Rachel Meinerding, who's married to Ryan, who's the concept artist, but she's also a customer. And so I talked to her about it, and she gave me a list, and she's also has the Concept Artists Association. But I always go to somebody who knows about that subject. So, if I'm looking up ways to dress Black children, I'll call Casey Regan and say, who are you following on Instagram? Like, it's just too much. So I'll call a librarian and say, what do you know about this? I'm constantly finding experts to help me reduce my time. And I have found that everybody is happy to talk about what they're looking at. Everybody. So that is my main thing about research now, is there's too much available. It used to be there was nothing available. Now it's the opposite. There's just such a glut of stuff out there. It's hard to source through it. So, find the expert, find the hashtags, find the people that can sort it through for you. Did you see this last question?
Sorry. Do you search images in Google or all, which you then search articles, etc., for the images? So, I generally kind of avoid using Google image search because I don't feel like it gives me like the best sources. Sometimes I'll do like a Google image search, and then it'll give you like a link to the website. So if I think I find like an interesting image, I'll try to go to the website to kind of find a source and then see if I can kind of find more on their page. But I think Google can generally be overwhelming as well. But I'm also a very visually driven person. So
that's fair.
It's a difference.
Eric, I was just going to say, what do you have to say about that?
If I'm very new to the topic and I've never thought about researching it before, I will use Google and like Wikipedia just to understand basic terminology or the origins of things. And then I'll go specifically to either government websites or educational websites or museums to kind of try and then narrow it down into trusted things that I can find more information about, or like if I'm looking at a book, like for some of this research, I used a book from the UCI library that was digitized. And I love books because they'll usually say like where they got the specific image from that I really like. So I can screen capture that image, or I can just go to the museum and type in the caption of the image and find the original that I was really looking for. So yes, you can use Google, and yes, you can use news articles and things from it, but it's not the funnest way or the preferred way that I like to do my research.
Agree.
So we wanted to show an alternative to Google. So I use Dropbox for work. And they have a website, but you can also download an app. So I'm going to try to go through the screenshots. Hopefully it won't be too confusing. But basically this is your homepage. I click on all files. The way that I do my research is I like to make a research folder for whatever I'm working on, and then I'll do the characters for each of those. And then if the character, like let's say the character is broken down into like, they show up in different ages. So I'll do like Matilda at 5, Matilda at 15. And then I will do my research and I'll write everything down in like a notes file. I will pull those images into my desktop just because that makes it easier for me. And then once I've got the most of it, the meat of my research, I will upload my folder onto Dropbox. So you just click this blue add button, and this will drop down. It'll say upload folder, and you can just drag the folder into there. And it'll put everything in there. So this is the folder open. So this is my research folder for this class. And then I have the characters broken down. So I have Bo Peep, Buzz Lightyear, Jessie.
Haley, can I interrupt really quick?
Yeah.
So you save the folder to your desktop,
Mhm.
and then you take that desktop folder here.
Mhm.
And does your desktop folder already have all these different extensions for Bo Peep, Buzz, or do you do that detail work on Dropbox?
No, it's easier to do it on your desktop because Dropbox is going to try and upload it to the internet. So it may take a minute for you to try and rename images and stuff. So I recommend getting organized on your desktop first with that file if you do your research like I do. And then pull everything onto there. And then you can add images pretty easily and videos and things like that. But the process of getting organized, I think, is better on your desktop. And then I name each of my files so I can find it easily later, because like once I said before, I'm a visual person. If I can't see that image, like I'm like, I have no idea. So I'll like name the image and then I'll put it into my notes file so that I can just find it really easily later. If I need to find like the Instagram link or the newspaper article that some of the stuff came from. And then the good thing about Dropbox is you can share the file with your team really easily. So if you click on these 3 dots over here, you can share it, which that means they can kind of go into it and edit it, kind of like with Google. You can copy the link so that they can kind of go in and see what's going on in there. Transfer is a non-free Dropbox option. So basically they can just download it. And then you can, like, let's say your computer wipes itself and horrors of horrors, you can download the entire folder again and just have that as another backup on your desktop. And you can also delete it, rename it, copy, move it, all that fun organizational stuff on there as well. And then here are some videos that we have for Dropbox and for Google. So you guys can look at it.
Let's go back and make sure everybody understands the Dropbox
Yeah.
procedure first before we go to the video. So let's just walk through it carefully, just go through the whole process just one more time.
Yeah. So find my project, find my research. I make a folder, my research folder, title of the film, what have you. And then I have all my characters, and then I have all my characters broken down by age. And then I bring all my information into there. And then once I'm organized and like all my files are named and I have all my sources kind of written down, then I will drop the meat of my stuff into Dropbox. So add, upload a folder, put my research folder into here. This is the overview of what's in the research folder. So these are my separate files. And then when I'm in my folder, everything is labeled because I will not remember it if I don't label it. Where I do my notes is, so I use a Mac. There's like a little notepad app, but you can use anything. You can use Microsoft Word, and you can also add that into your folder as well. Notes just happens to be easy for me because it's on my desktop really fast, and then I can just kind of copy paste it wherever. And like Erica, I usually keep that in my research folder just so it's easily accessible. And then, yeah, sharing the file with the team. Let me know if I skipped over anything because we've been working on
Any
this.
questions about this? Okay. Great.
And then, yeah, Erica made a video on Google. Here's mine on Dropbox. Oh, it's playing it.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk
I'm
to
going to see
you
if I can
about...
just... There we go. Erica,
Okay.
you're muted, sorry.
I was
So-
just whispering to you, please don't play that.
I understand. So after we've done all this work, we get a phone call and they're going to start shooting in 4 weeks and they're going to make it. It's too expensive to make it in the future and it's too expensive to make it in the past. So they're going to do it now. And the good news is all the research that we've already done will provide us with the information that we need to go shopping and get going with catalogs and the shop to get everything made that we're going to have to made, which will be a lot of multiples. So the good news is we have really great research created so we can do anything. The studio can call us and make any change they want. Again, so the end of our movie. So here's some of our favorite costume resources. I think this is
Me.
Erica's. It looks like Erica to me.
Yeah, it truly does. So like Haley, I'm not always on Instagram, but I am mostly on Facebook just to keep looking at different news articles or different postings from people. So these are 3 of the main Facebook groups I follow that I really love and enjoy seeing like all the different perspectives and just discussions happening about costumes in today's society. In that note, I also am a member of the Costume Society of America, which is a lot of publishing and historical research about fashion and costumes. So I really enjoy staying up to date on different research things. And then kind of in talking about like, I don't know, different ways of finding inspiration or thinking about cultures in how I like to research and what I like to consider as an individual. I really recommend you watch Ugly Delicious, actually, which is a cooking show, but it's very fun because it talks about this intersection of culture and how, for example, a dumpling in one society and one culture is also like what is it? It's a pizza pocket in American culture or in like a Western society. So it just is an interesting way of reconsidering what different terms are and what they mean to different people and how it can be dressed up or dressed down. And then native land is what I use today to kind of figure out where the original stewards of the land were and how we can give them their due recognition in any project and kind of understand where we are. So I recommend looking into that.
UCLA has a project called Mapping Indigenous LA, and I'll put that website on. You can also go into that project, and they're pretty specific about, really specific about which area we are treading on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about your Google Arts and Culture for a second?
Right. Absolutely. So this is a newer thing by Google. I don't know if anyone's played with it yet. And I do say play because it's quite fun. It takes you and you can look into different museums, different ways of just like looking at culture and things and artistic works. Susie loves it. Thank you, Susie. And just like have a fun time. Because I think that if you have a moment, it's always fun to see and learn something that you didn't know beforehand. Because then you stay like innovative and you can make different connections that are very interesting. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bobby.
Don't you want to mention the textbook, your textbook?
Yeah, I'm a huge textbook nerd. I wish these were my actual bookshelves, but I have a lot more that's a lot less tidy. These are two textbooks I frequently go to when I'm doing research. One of them is Totora, who's just come out with a new edition. I've yet to get my hands on it, but it's exciting. And the other one, The Worldwide History of Dress, it's not as, it's not westernized, basically. It has some Western culture in it, but it's looking at the entire global scale and cultures that aren't just in the Western canon. So I really enjoy looking at that when I have a specific project or it mentions a specific region in the world, like Southeast Asia, that I can then look to this textbook and see accurate information about their history, which may not have been taught in general education that has been given lately. So, and then the Complete Pattern Directory, I think it's a newer book as well. I enjoy it because it has patterns from medieval times up until like 2019. So I like looking at it for different motifs or color schemes or things like that, just to kind of get the juices flowing.
There's also a great organization that when we can do live events again, it's the Textile Association too, that I'll put a link, I'll go back and put in. And they have amazing, they're very similar to CSA but their focus is international textiles. And some of the best talks I've been to have been through Textile Association. Any questions for Erica about how she works? Okay, let's see Haley's fabulous page.
So I am a pop culture junkie, so that reflects in how I like to look at things and get inspired. So I love to look at art books. I'm an art book kind of junkie. That's where a lot of my money is spent. I have a big library on my bookshelf. This one specifically is from the art of Into the Spider-Verse. I love reading about like where the artists got all of their inspiration from, how their personality plays into their clothing and their design. I think it's a really fresh way to kind of look into that stuff. And then I picked up this book called Festival Folk by Rob Flowers, which has a bunch of different festival and like carnival outfits throughout like the whole world. And I think it's like $20 on Amazon. It's really, really fun with like a lot of really cute illustrations in it. And then this is a contemporary lingerie underwear book about by Cora Harrington. And it's pretty much everything that you could want to know about, how to maintain, what some of the stuff is for, which I'm sure, we're all educated in, but I find it very interesting to read it from, someone who's very passionate about lingerie. And then again is ArtStation. So this is just what the ArtStation like intro page looks like. They just kind of bombard you with images. And if you see something, like I'll just click on something and then go through the hashtags, go see the creator. It's very, very inspiring. And then you can search up here. I don't know if you could see my cursor and put in hashtags in there like you would in Pinterest or Instagram or anything like that. And then of course there's coolers.co, which we have gone through. And I'm also really into pop surrealism. And when, we could, I used to go to a lot of galleries and look at the art up close because it's when moving from Austin to here and seeing like the wealth of art that was here was just so cool. Because I would always get these magazines and just look at them and like be in awe over it. So this is always really inspiring, and to see what, contemporary artists are thinking about. And also I spend a lot of time on YouTube. So one of my favorite channels is called The Way We Wore, which I'm sure Bobby is familiar with. And she goes through like this beautiful collection that she has and showing the history of it, doing interviews about like, the costumes of the nanny and Fran Drescher. I also follow someone named Bernadette Banner, who like creates, Victorian clothing all with Victorian methods. There's just a wealth of information on there. And then when I want to see people in like their real environments, like I'm looking up barrel racing, I'll look up barrel racing videos, and just get, the gist of it from that. And I think Hope had a question for Erica. Can you share with us how you find sources, museums, collections, libraries, and stuff, etc.?
All right, this is me cheating based off of my undergraduate degree of being a history major. So basically what I like to do is, if there's something very specific, and I'll give you an example of using Buzz because I think that's the best one I can come up with right now. Trying to find an old diving suit from the 1890s. Yes, you can Google it, but I also don't know if by Googling it, I'll get the exact decade that I'm looking for based off the images, because they don't have to be specific. So what I initially tried to do is I went to any Navy museum, and I just typed in Navy museums, and I started scrolling through to see if they had archives or a database that I could look through, or if I could call someone to ask them if they had photographs of such an old piece that I'm looking for. And then if that didn't work, I kept going on to, well, maybe the Smithsonian has something, because the Smithsonian is a really good, just central place to look for just a random thing that may not be necessarily fashion related, because if it was fashion related, I would go to FITM or the Met or the Victoria and Albert Museum. But for something that's really general, like a diving suit, maybe the Smithsonian has something. So it's basically, you just have to carve out like 30 minutes. And as you look for something in Google, like a museum, Navy museum, you can also have the other thoughts of, okay, well, if that's not going to work at a Navy museum, maybe I can go to a submarine museum. Maybe I go to an old fishing museum, or just like different places that you can just scatter ideas around and then see what seeds have been sown. And then with the flight suit, it's like kind of the same thing. It's, what is the period that I can look for? Do I go to the Wilbur Wright Flight Museum? Do they have actual images? I went to the Air and Space Smithsonian for that, to see different fighter pilots in the World War I flight suits and things. So you really just have to be very open and let any ideas come in that might spark, like, oh, there might be a museum for that, or there might be a group of people for that who are really good aviation enthusiasts who have collected their own images and have just like posted it on the Getty, or I can't think of another website, but I know there's other websites that have like purchased images with a fan base that supports the research they've done on it. Which I don't want to say anything, but I think that's a really great segue into something that Bobby's going to talk about later.
Well, I don't know what that's going to be.
I'll let
I
you know.
want to say, though, I just call them museums.
Or that.
I just call it. When I worked at Western, I just called everyone, and I still just do that. So, for example, when Patty Norris was doing 12 Years a Slave, is that right? Right. She had this idea that the slaves were able to come from Africa. She wanted to find some sort of connection to the textiles of Africa. And she kept having it in her head that somehow someone brought a textile from Africa. So for that, we called museum curators, in New Orleans, South Carolina, North Carolina, NYU, Resource Center. Like, we called librarians. We spoke to, I still do. I just call people directly and say what I'm doing. And generally they're very receptive. And the answer is the slaves came naked. There was no ever trace of fabric that anybody could identify. Oh, so this is my page. So people ask me all the time what my library is like, which I had made my library pretty small, and I had donated a lot of my books to Western, and then turned around and started acquiring them all over again because I needed them for teaching. So I made a thing of what would I do if I could just have 20 books, which was really hard. But I do a lot of surveys. You know, I like to have surveys just so I can see what came before, what came after. That's sort of my obsession. And so these on the left are terrific surveys. Items, which is from MoMA. It's only the second time MoMA did a fashion exhibition. And what's particularly great about that is that it will say like kilt, and then it'll take you back into the history of how many times that's appeared in history. So you can see all, it's a really handy catalog for references. And then the Met right now has a wonderful exhibition called About Time that works the way I teach. Haley can tell you that the whole idea of the way I teach is they have to find what is correct historically and then find where that silhouette is repeated in contemporary times or modern times. So how to read a dress and how to read a suit gives you the specifics. And then the Met's catalog will take that specific of historic reference, and they'll also go they'll put it together with the present, with some fabulous design from the present. So I really recommend getting About Time. The three books I use the most are the catalog from the photography show at the Getty, and then the two books from LACMA, Reigning Men and Fashioning Fashion. I really encourage everyone over and over and over again to start collecting museum catalogs. You can download them for free. Museums that are funded by the public are required to release the catalogs for free online. Legally, they have to do it within I don't know if it's 3 years. They have some limit. So you can download a lot, but museums spend 5 years at least putting an exhibition together. So every single photograph that they choose counts. So for me, I still want to go back to exhibition catalogs and go to exhibitions because I know that the people who have chosen those images have thought about it, and they've looked at 100 other images before they chose that one to represent the period. So I think it's really important for everyone to support museums. And one way you can support them is buying the catalogs, and then the catalogs also increase in value dramatically. I think Reigning Men right now I know the cheapest I saw it was 200, but I've seen it for like 550. In addition to the folk encyclopedia, Before They Pass Away is a really beautiful and inspiring book. But there aren't many international books for us yet. It's just coming. So when I have, like, my nephew was in China, and so they brought me back books from China that we can't buy here. So I'm able to do that. So I constantly, if somebody tells me they're going to another country and they're generous enough to bring back a book with them, that's the best way to build your collection, is to beg your friends to bring you a book for a present. There are more and more Black books coming out and Black photographers, which I can't recommend highly enough. There's a contemporary Muslim fashion that's originated in San Francisco, and it's really, really fun. I recommend getting the Dior book. Any monograph on any designer will be really worth it. I go to a lot of auctions. I look at a lot of auction catalogs to see what just to see what popular culture is interested in. Like, what are they spending their money on? Like right now, the most expensive dress you can buy at auction is a Poiret. It went for $90,000. But I like to look at the auction houses just to see what's going on, who's popular, who's not popular. There's a lot more of really interesting books about art and fashion. I like this one, but there's a lot of them. And then I like documentary photo books that are not made for costume people, but made, just because they make them. And my favorite all-time photographer of this work is the great Bill Owens, who actually came here for dinner when he was talking at the Getty. He's truly my hero. And then there's lots of great books finally coming out on music. I think when they had the exhibition at, the Annenberg Center for Photography, which is no longer, but Wallace did a really great exhibition on rock and roll. And since then, we've been seeing a lot of rock and roll movies. So I think they were right across, the museum's right across from CAA. So I think everybody went over to see, at lunch to the museum, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, what are we missing here? And the next thing you know, it's like James Brown, it's all these autobiographies start coming out. And then here, I want to mention this, the Little History of the World. That is the great art historian did this book for 12 to for young adults. It's the best history book I can possibly tell you about. So whenever I'm trying to work on something historic, I go back and look and see what Gombrich says about it, so I can know who was the king, who was this, what was going on. So in very fast, I can get a handle on it by an art critic, so I know what he's looking at when he's writing it. So I highly recommend, if you're ever in a jam, to try to figure out what you're doing, look at A Little History of the World. And the same for Chronology of Art, to help you. If you're thinking about your palette, you can quickly open that and see what were the popular paintings of that period, like what was going on. And then, oh my gosh, look at here in the upper right-hand corner. So most costume history classes use the Survey of Costume History. So after I used that book a couple of times, I started writing Bloomsbury, like, I need a coloring book. I need a coloring book. I need my students, I'm Xeroxing coloring pages for my students to color. So this year, when I wrote them, I need a coloring book, they called me back and they said Bloomsbury would never do a coloring book. It's a little too low rent for their publishing house. And then they called me back and they said, well, we took a survey of 35 people and everybody wants a coloring book. So Christina and I just finished it, and it will be available in the fall. So if you know any costume history teachers, they can now have a coloring book. Okay, that's the end of my library. And then I started a follow me page, but I thought I had another hour before class started to finish putting everyone in. But like I say, I immediately, whatever I'm doing, the first thing I do is call somebody who knows something. So when Ivy first talked to me about this class, I was thinking, I should get a list of great Instagram people just to get ideas. So of course, I called Rachel Miner-Ding, who's the head of who's working on the Concept Art Association. And I asked her to give me a list of just interesting concept artists, both in the guild and out of the guild, that people can look at just for different ideas of who to follow. And I'll add to this, I have a really nice museum list that I'll add to this for you all. I'm sorry it's not on here already. And we'll put on several other sites that we all follow that I think would be valuable. But in this universe of all these people that Rachel sent, this was like a really revelatory for me, because it was a lot of things I don't look at all, which is why I wanted to include it. Okay, and this is our how-to. So before we start the how-to again, is there any questions? Okay, how-to.
Do we want to go through, like, watch these videos? This was on Coolers, which we did the in-depth one before.
Let's do what else you have, and then we'll go back. Let's look at reverse
Okay.
search, or let's do Pantone next before we're too tired. Well, is everybody still with us?
We want to see the library again.
Well, you can all have this. No,
Okay.
we're going to give you this. So you don't need to look at this. But what I want to say about the library is tomorrow I would probably put 5 different books on there than I have today. But that was just a good attempt. And there's things I left out that I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay, Pantone.
Okay. I can try to screen share because I think the video is going to be kind of fast. Should I go through and just do a live one?
Yeah, let's do it slowly.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, and stop me if I go too fast. I do this all the time. So it's very like second nature to me. So just tell me to hit the brakes and I will. I'm going to go to the bottom right-hand corner here and I'm going to hit a plus and create a new layer. And then I'm going to hit in this upper left-hand corner, the marquee tool, which just looks like a square box. And I'm just going to put that on this layer here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit the I button on my keyboard, or you can click the eyedropper tool over here and just click wherever you want to get the color. And then I think the easiest way to show, so I get my paint bucket tool here, and then I just click on the little square so that I have that later for reference. So in order to find the, let me just pull up my chat again, just so I don't accidentally miss something if someone says anything.
I'll let you know, Haley.
Okay, thank you. So then you double click on the color over here in this box, and that's going to bring up all of the information about the color. So the easiest way that I use it is with the RGB down here. So that's red 74, green 105, and blue 126. It also gives you the hex code right underneath that. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up Pantone. Let me get my screen share back on here. I'm going to go to, here we are. So the site I went to, which we'll provide you with, it's pantone.com/color finder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert. So first off, in Pantone's color library, all you know that you have to do is find Pantone Fashion Home and Interiors. You're just going to do dye on cotton fabric so that you get the perfect like color that you need, because it will change depending on what you kind of need it for. And I'm just moving my Photoshop in the background here. You guys can't see that, so I can get the RGB up. So red was 74, green was 105, and blue is 126. And there we have it. You hit search, and there's your color. It's Pantone 18-4026 in Stellar. So if there's a color you just really love and you want to make sure that you are just totally copying that palette, then you just click on here. And then you can also, well, that's not good. You can also buy an example swatch normally on here. So you can like get the cotton swatch in person and look at it to make sure that that's what you really want. Does anyone have any questions about?
Can you walk through it one more time?
Yep. Let me close these guys out. Get back on my Photoshop. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to make another box with this tool in the upper left-hand corner here. And then I'm going to use my eyedropper tool, and I'm going to pull this red color here, and I'm just clicking and dragging till I get the red that I want. And then I'm going to get my paint bucket tool, click on that, click on your square so you can reference it later. And then I'm going to double click on the swatch box here. That way I can get my RGB or my hex code here. And then I'm going to input that information into the Pantone swatch finder. So my red was 226, my green was 70, and my blue is 48. Search. There you go. Mandarin red. And then maybe this one will let me buy it. Nope. Of course. But generally this is how I get swatches, because I like to look at the fabric and touch it and feel it and make sure it's the correct color.
You send for the swatches?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the swatches are generally like $12 for like a swatch about this big. And you can also get them on secondhand sites, because Pantone's been having some trouble with the pandemic keeping up with orders and stuff like that. So I find them through other websites as well.
Any questions on this? Haley Joe did a beautiful video on this too, to walk you through it.
Yeah, so that's here. And then I have an image to kind of remind you what that's about, because there's a lot of information.
Going to ship.
No, okay.
Hey, Haley, really quick.
Yeah.
Where can you find these other swatches? On what websites, like eBay or?
You can find them on eBay. Generally, the way I find them is if I'm just really having a hard time finding a swatch, I'll just put in the 17-1562, and then it'll bring me to like a bunch of different sites on Google that will carry the swatch, and I could just buy it off of there.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So let's say I want to find the Mandarin red. So it's the 17-1562. So you can find it on Pantone if they have it. Trying to see. So I've ordered off of Columbia Omni Studio before, and I've also used Hyatt's. I like Hyatt's a little bit better. I think, so yeah, you just have your cotton swatch, add it to cart, and you're all set. You can also find quick order swatches. So if you have like a whole list of swatches that you want to order, you can just enter in what you need and just one, and it's already got the Mandarin red. So you can just enter in all those at once and order it all at once. It's super easy.
Awesome.
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about anything? And we can put the links to these websites in later as well. And then I also have like I said, I'm a visual person, so like screenshots of the steps so you can go through it. Gara, sorry. And these are videos on how to reverse image search and how to use Pinterest. I think Susie was asking if we could go through reverse image search. Okay, let's see. So let's go to google.com. So I go to Google, and then I click in the upper right-hand corner here and go to images. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an image and drag, man, Photoshop's up, sorry. I'm going to take an image and I'm going to drag it into the search bar. And what that's going to do is it's going to upload the file, and then it's going to bring you to a bunch of links. It will also give you a bunch of visually similar images. So if you found something that you really like, you can kind of branch off your search from there as well. But let's look at this first link here. People in nature. Interesting. It's not always accurate, but I'm not sure why it did that. Interesting. Well,
So sorry, I just realized this might be a new thing too, because Google had to redo their copyright infringement things.
Mhm.
So they might be only giving you commercially available copyright.
I see. Okay. Yeah, because I actually got this off of the photographer's website who did this. So very interesting that you brought me there. But it's a good way generally to find a source on an image that you don't know where it came from. That's how I found all my sources on Pinterest and like the artists who did them and stuff like that. And then what else did we have? How I use Pinterest. Erica, do you want to show how you use Pinterest? Because I know we use it in different ways, or do you want me to?
By all means, please take it away, because mine's
Okay.
full of class projects. So.
Okay. All right, let's go to Pinterest. So this is my homepage. Obviously, I've been looking at a lot of cowboy stuff, so it's bringing up some Orville Peck and some interesting stuff here. I'm going to go to my splash page. And so I like to organize things by the project. And like I said, I'm a very like aesthetically driven person. So let's go to, we did a project with Ruth Carter. It's out now. So it was for school. So let's say I scroll down to the bottom to kind of see the start of everything. This was more fashion driven, but also combining it with research on the Ndebele tribe, which is what I made my dress based off of with Ruth. So obviously started out with the Ndebele, and then I started branching off into more contemporary fashion and how they're using that now and using the kente cloth in contemporary fashion. And like I said, I like when the colors kind of match up and you can see like my line of thinking and my research. Obviously I went from like more traditional research, going into fashion research, looking at avant-garde silhouettes, big silhouettes, using the bold black and white like the Ndebele used to kind of keep their art so their backgrounds are bold black and white geometric shapes, and then the inside is very colorful and beautiful. So I wanted my outside shape to be very bold and black and white and keep all that geometric beautiful colors inside of there. And yeah, just kind of going forward with that. And like Erica was saying, it's kind of like a rabbit hole. So like once you find like an image that you really like, you scroll down and you just kind of keep going like, oh, this is really beautiful. And then you'll save it to whatever board that you have. And then, okay, let's say I really like this too. And then it'll just kind of take you down a rabbit hole. This is not the Ndebele tribe, but just for example. Yeah, that's kind of how I use it, just to get inspired and get an aesthetic going, and then have more places for me to go research into.
What I will say with Pinterest too is that FITM and like different museums like the Met also have some Pinterest images. So sometimes my Pinterest boards are lacking only because I found one dress from the Met that I just immediately clicked over, and then I started going down that trend and then related search items.
Yeah.
So that's super helpful for me too.
Yeah, Vogue is on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is just trying to screenshot and simplify each of the steps. See, this worked out fine over here, but like I said, it's not always reliable, so it's better to start with like a better source. But Bobby, I think you're muted.
Everything that they've been doing, they have, they're giving you a video so they can walk you through it, but they're also giving you a lot of just photo, that you can follow the easy directions.
Mhm.
That's the best part. I need the easy directions. So I appreciate it. Any other questions?
Do we want me to actually go back and show how to do the Google folders and documents and things?
Yeah. What do you want?
I can screen do it all.
So this is the end. So we can go back over anything you want. We've run through everything we prepared. We talked a lot faster than I thought we were going to, but which is good. It gives everybody their Sunday back. But we can go back on to Erica's. We rushed through that. We can go back to see how she does it. Do you want to do that really quickly?
Absolutely. So again, please ignore the academic that is my life. I just go to the folder I've set up for this, which is Cowboy, because I'm very articulate. And then I can go to this drop-down arrow that's conveniently titled New, and I can create a new folder. I can upload files from my desktop. I can upload a folder from my desktop. And then I can do basically the whole Microsoft package of a document, a Google Sheet, or a presentation. So let's say I want a new folder entitled Thoughts. Sure, that's great. So it immediately comes up here. And the great thing about this is that I can share this file or this entire Google folder with whomever I need to based on this drop-down arrow. And then I can go to share. I can open it if I connect more apps. Again, I create a new folder. I can link this. So if in an email, I can just send the link to someone instead of having to remember the email off the top of my head, which is sometimes very helpful. I can move this to a different Google folder if I'm trying to combine things. Sorry, I can't see the chat. So Haley, I'm going to task you with that if I need it.
You're good.
Rename anything, change colors just for like visual organization, or I can search within Cowboy and find an image that I have maybe trapped inside of here. So I think his name is...
That's helpful.
Oh, yep. So that's what I enjoy doing. I really enjoy Google because I think it's meant to be as helpful as possible until I stymie it. Going into Cowboy Research with all of my things, again, I can create new folders to separate all of my characters with. So in Bo Peep, I labeled her just as I found all the resources. I can also capture screenshots on my laptop, and then I just drag the image over from my desktop to Google, and it immediately uploads it for me, whether it's a JPEG, a PDF, a Word document, what have you, which I think is super helpful. And then again, I can share it lifetime with anyone. We can all edit documents at the same time, and it works really well for my uses as a student. Does anyone have any questions based off of Google that I can answer for you right now? Or can I continue selling Google to you?
I have a question for Haley.
Mm-hmm.
Do you primarily do your research though from the computer? Because I know that you also have a library. We've talked about this a lot, but
Yeah.
How often do you go to books?
I love books. I was just saying I miss the library a lot because I really like, so one of my main sources, like as a kid, was tell me if I'm going off on a tangent, but magazines and books. I would always ask my mom to get me these Harajuku books about Japanese fashion and stuff. And they were importing it at that time was $50 for a $10 magazine. So she'd now, but my library would have them. So I'd go and look there, and I still kind of have that habit. But with the pandemic, I would say, a lot of it is on the computer. But yeah,
Well, most of my students, and I'm interested if Jacqueline has the same experience, most of my students don't own any books.
Yeah.
Zero. Like they don't have any books at all. And they do everything online, which is not to say they're not looking at museum catalogs because they're available online. But they don't look that way. They don't think that way. I would say probably at least 75% of my students don't have books.
I would say that's really true from when I was in your class, Bobby. I don't think anyone really went to the library to look for information unless we were kind of forced to.
Yeah. Hi, Wendy. So that's about it. Is there any other questions? The good news is that they've worked really hard making these how-to videos for people, and they really work. And then also all the sites have how-tos. Somebody asked about the picture collection at the New York Public Library. Yes, I use it all the time, but there's so many others that are coming online at the same time. It used to be the New York Public Library was almost the only game in town, and now it's just overwhelming how much information there is. I didn't think about breaking all those down, how to use, like, to go in with all of the sites that we use. NYPL has a pretty good instruction. Most of them have pretty good instructions to follow, but I guess let me think about that. Any other questions? Oh, this is like teaching. We're done.